My name is Nora Kaldee. I'm the founder of Neuritas. The real change in my career came with the realization that the key to preventing and curing many diseases around the world lies in food data. And it's by using mathematics and computer science that we are going to dig deep into food to identify those molecules. Now, what am I talking about? If I were to ask you what the image behind me represents, you'd say an apple, a red apple, and you'd be correct. But at Neuritas, we see this in a very different light. We see this apple in terms of data, trillions and trillions of molecules. To put it in perspective, there's more data in this one apple than all social media put together. And we're particularly interested in these molecules called peptides. Peptides are fragments of proteins that carry tremendous health benefits. They can actually cure, eradicate, prevent many diseases that are existing in the world today. The real problem is that identifying those molecules has been really, really hard. It takes usually hundreds of millions and years of research to identify them. At Neuritas, what we have is a technology called ENPify. It's a technology that's based on artificial intelligence. And what it does is that it looks at molecules in food, the trillions of molecules in food, and it identifies the subsets of peptides that have a very specific health benefit. They do that by binding to certain receptors in your human body and signaling certain signals that are going to reduce certain diseases. Now, a lot of people tell me, why don't we just eat the foods if you're just identifying these molecules in food? Well, it's not that easy, you see, and you'll see it behind me here. We're representing inflammation, which is at the core of many diseases. If you look at your complete left, you'll see the control. So these are inflamed cells. The yellower, the more inflamed they are. And what we decided to do is look at how a certain food will impact that inflammation. As you can see, the second panel there shows similar yellowness. So the food has not actually reduced any inflammation. At the contrary, it has actually enhanced the inflammation. But by us looking at the food and unlocking those peptides from within the food, you can see complete annihilation of inflammation. Now, inflammation, like I was saying, lies at the core of many diseases: cancer, Alzheimer's, arthritis, autoimmune diseases, etc. And we have identified these peptides within these different foods that actually annihilate inflammation. We have scaled the ingredient, and now it's in clinical. Other ingredients that we have developed so far and discovered are ingredients capable of moving glucose from the blood into the muscle. Now, why this is important is that a lot of diabetics and pre-diabetics do not have that movement, so the movement of glucose doesn't actually occur. And this is very interesting for us because this is the first time that actually artificial intelligence is capable of creating a whole new family of molecules that have never been discovered before. They don't look like any other molecule in the world before, and the mechanism of action of these molecules is very different from any known thing. Other areas of interest to us is antimicrobial. So we have discovered many ingredients within food that actually kill certain pathogenic bacteria. So for example, behind me here, we're showing with and without our ingredients. And we're looking at mincemeat, for example. You have lots of bacterial growth on mincemeats. And if you put mincemeat under 37 degrees for 48 hours, you can see that with our ingredient, there's no bacterial growth whatsoever. And without, you have lots of pathogenic bacterial growth. So what Neuritas really is doing is that we're cutting the cost and the time of discovery and development of these therapeutic ingredients. We have discovered a whole new ocean of combinations of peptides. We are creating preventative, cost-effective preventative products, which before Neuritas were not really existing because it's very hard to find something that's pharmaceutical grade while at a low cost. So we're maintaining costs very low. The other thing we're doing is that, as you know, the pharma industry is hitting a wall because their pipeline is dry. And what we're allowing the pharma industries is creating novel combinations of molecules that's going to enrich their pipeline. But more importantly, because we're looking into food, we're adding value to a lot of these foods that are thrown away. So if you think about it, in a few years' time, in 2050, we will be 9 billion people. We will need 70% extra food, and yet we're throwing away 50% of food currently at the production level, even before it reaches the shelves. And the reason why companies are throwing away this food is because they don't know what to do with it. We have found ways of adding value to those foods by identifying these molecules within it. So we're giving a new life to these foods. So we won't need to throw away 50% of food. But more importantly, for the first time ever, Neuritas is capable of unlocking from food molecules that are going to transform health. These molecules have been embedded in food since the dawn of time, but no one has been capable to actually go into food and identify them. Now, it hasn't been easy creating Neuritas. Personally, I went through quite a lot with it. But initially, when I first started, the first observation I made was that they were trying to box Neuritas. They were trying to compare Neuritas to something that exists. You are the Uber of something or the Facebook of something else. And when they couldn't really box us, they tried to change us. They tried to change me and the company. I didn't really accept that because we weren't a pharma company. I could have been a pharma company, but I didn't want to take the traditional way of doing it. We weren't a pure tech company. We weren't a food company. We were all three together, and that's why we're disrupting the way health was being played and discovered in terms of molecules. So real innovation can't be boxed and shouldn't be changed. The other thing as well, ironically, is that and this really ironically is that the negative point that business people saw in me when I first started was that I was a scientist. And that was crazy because it is a scientific company I created. But the negative was I was a scientist. And the reason why is because they're like, you're too passionate, you speak too scientific, reduce on the science, you're talking to business people. So I wrote behind me a few points. You can see hard work, long hours, passion, drive. The job is not secure, constantly chasing funding, persistence, super competitive, wanting to solve a problem to help humanity. Now, all the scientists in the room would say this is the definition of a scientist. And they'll be right. And all the entrepreneurs in the room would be saying this is totally the definition of an entrepreneur, and they'll be totally right as well. This is exactly the definition of both. And anyone that comes and tells you a scientist is not an entrepreneur is off their head. Because the goal of a scientist obviously is different. It's to publish. But a goal can be changed. The pedigree of this cannot. Pedigree is very, very interesting. And anyone, like I said, that comes and tells you you're a scientist, you're not a business person, you can't create a company, is really off their head. I got a lot of this as well initially when I first started, the impossible. Don't waste your time. It's been tried, no one succeeded, so really don't waste your time. One of the things was, initially when I first started, as a scientist actually in academia, people have tried this. They have tried to use artificial intelligence and they have failed, so why try? Other things was the evaluation of the company was too high, you'll never get it. Your seed round is well too high, you absolutely never get it. The quality of people you want in your team is too high, they'll never join a startup. The business model you have created wouldn't work because, royalty in startups, people don't really take that seriously. Foreign investment is something you will never get. Silicon Valley investors will never invest in a company in Ireland. They have a lot of choice over there. We have proven all this wrong many, many, many times. So anyone that comes and tells you something is impossible, and if you're sane, I think you're doing something right, because don't believe them. They have not lived. And then the other thing as well that I got a lot of is you need a background in business to create a business. And it's not right. You just need the smarts. If you have the smarts, you have the smarts. Whatever your background. If you're a mother at home or working in a company, what you definitely need is being adaptable, understanding the market, Having the power to bring people with you within the vision that you want to go towards, and then persistence and knowing when to follow your gut and when not to follow your gut. But absolutely anyone can create a company if you have the smarts. And then the photo behind me is my business partner's shoes. He was very kind to take them off yesterday and put them for a photo. It's great to see a room full of women. I worked in many areas where I was the only woman. I'm a coder, a pure mathematician, bioinformatician, and so forth. And I worked in lots of areas where there was very, very few women. But this story here, last year I was giving a talk in California, and then a few days later I was in Chicago where I was at an event, and I was introduced to this lady who was an executive. She was the CEO of a large corporation. And she looked at me and she said, "I saw you speak last week." And then she said, "You were wearing the same shoes." And she just turned away and left. And I'm like, this is actually crazy. I was so shocked I didn't know what to answer. But the reality and the message that I want to get through is that it's great to want the world to change how it behaves with us. But I think change comes from within. We really need to learn how to help each other in terms of women. And if we don't, no one is. So Emmett, my business partner, would have never gotten that from another man or a woman. So I think we really, really need to help each other. At Neuritas is about 50-50 men, women, and I want to keep that going. We are looking for people, by the way, so join the movement. And just to finish off by saying that the people that ask me, is it hard to create a company? It is very, very hard. It's very tough, long hours and so forth. But is it worth it? Yes, it is. Go for it. Go for it.
Want to be in the audience next time? Click here for tickets to InspireFest 2017.